Episode, I dive into intense subject matter that may not be suitable for all audiences. I discuss sensitive topics including mental health, trauma, addiction, and crimes against women that some listeners may find triggering. If you are sensitive to these subjects, please take care of yourself while listening. Your well-being is priority. Tune in and proceed with caution. You're all a bunch of feminists, and I hate feminists. Hi, friends. My name is Verona, and I'm here to tell you an unpleasant story. I upload new episodes weekly, and today we'll dive into the haunting tale of Marc Lépine. The nightmares that haunted Heidi Rathigan for such a long time seem to have disappeared. For years, she snapped awake at night, tormented by the remembered sounds of screams, shouts, and the popping of an assault rifle. Heidi was reliving real life. On December 6, 1989, when she spent 45 minutes huddled in silent terror in a student lounge at the University of Montreal, while a 25-year-old man who was semi-recluse with a hatred for women roamed the halls, shooting at any female he saw. That man's name was Marc Lépine. The powerful and chilling relevance of the term femicide within Canadian context, particularly reflecting on the tragic events that took place this day when Marc Lépine entered École Polytechnique at University of Montreal with a chilling intent to target women and blame them for his identified failures. He would separate students by gender and declared, "You're a bunch of feminists, and I hate feminists," before unleashing horrific acts of violence onto the women. Marc was born in Montreal on October 26, 1964. He was the son of a French-Canadian nurse named Monique Lépine and an Algerian businessman, Rachid Gaharbi. Marc's birth name was Gamel Garbi. Rachid was a mutual fund salesman and was traveling in the Caribbean at the time of his son's birth. During his absence, Monique had discovered that her husband was having an affair. Rachid was a non-practicing Muslim, and Monique was a former Catholic nun. She rejected the organized religion after she left the convent. Marc was baptized a Catholic as an infant, but received no religious instructions during his childhood. His mother described her son as a confirmed atheist all his life. The family moved frequently, and much of young Marc's early childhood was spent in Costa Rica and Puerto Rico, where his father worked for a Swiss mutual funds company. His younger sister, Nadia, was born sometime in 1967, and in 1968, the family decided to permanently move back to Montreal. Instability and violence would follow the family, as Rachid was known to be abusive towards his wife and eventually his children, particularly his son, and discouraged any forms of tenderness, as he considered it spoiling. Like father, like son, his father also had a disdain for women and believed they were intended only to serve men. He required his wife to act as his personal secretary, slapping her if she made any errors in typing and forcing her to retype documents despite cries from their toddlers. Rachid left the marriage after Monique returned to nursing and to support their children. They separated in 1971, and the divorce was finalized in 1976. Marc was 7 years old at the time. Marc and his younger sister Nadia lived with other families who cared for them during the week and only seeing their mother on weekends. Marc was afraid of his father and at first saw him only on weekly supervised visits, The visits ended quickly as Rashid ceased contact with his children soon after the separation from his wife. Mark never saw his father again, and later he would refuse to discuss him with other people. When the children were about 12 and 9, they returned to live with their mother full time after she had been promoted to director of nursing at a Montreal hospital. Mark was considered bright but withdrawn and had difficulties with his peers and family relationships. At the age of 14, he legally changed his name, given hatred of his father as his reason. However, even with Rashid out of the picture, the family's relationships remained difficult. Mark suffered from low self esteem, aggravated by his chronic acne. His younger sister Nadia publicly humiliated him about his acne and his lack of girlfriends. Mark would fantasize about her death and on one occasion made a mock grave for her. So we can see early on, Mark had some serious hatred for his sister. I think this goes deeper than sibling rivalry. Who makes a mock grave for their sibling? Like, we've all done some wild stuff, but a mock grave? Mark was overjoyed when in 1981 she was placed in a group home because her delinquent behavior and drug abuse. Nadia would later die in 1996 at the age of 28 from a drug overdose of cocaine. Seeking a good role model for her son, Monique arranged for a big brother. Note, those of you who are unfamiliar with Big Brother, no, not the government. Big Brother, Big Sister program is a youth mentoring program that connects adult volunteers, the bigs, with children and teenagers, the littles, to provide support, guidance, and positive role models in their lives. The goal of the Big Brother, Big Sister program is to help young people develop confidence, improve their academic performance, the ones that have low grades in school, or build social skills through one-on-one relationship. For 2 years, the experience proved positive as Mark and his new best friend enjoyed their time with photography and motocross motorcycles. However, in 1979, the meetings were abruptly ceased when the big brother was detained on suspicion of molesting young boys. Both Mark and his big brother denied any molestation had occurred between the two. So there has never been confirmed if Mark was ever molested by his big brother, but the police did find evidence of it happening to other boys within the Big Brother, Big Sister program. So as a precaution, Monique did end up pulling her son out of the program. Mark said it never happened. His mother was inclined to believe him, and obviously the big brother who was doing the heinous acts wouldn't admit to it either because, well, it's illegal. So that's still up for debate with most people on whether Mark had fallen victim to his big brother during that 2-year window of mentorship. Mark would later apply for Canadian Forces as a cadet in 1981. His application was rejected. Hold a pin in that because this will come back later. Mark would later tell friends his rejection was due to his difficulties accepting authority. In 1982, he began a science program at college, switching to a more technical program after a year. In 1986, he dropped out of the course in his final term. One former teacher recalls his strange, faraway eyes and said he seldomly seemed happy. In 1987, he was fired from his job at a hospital for aggressive behavior, disrespect of his supervisor, and carelessness in his work. His dismissal enraged him, and at the time, he would describe a plan to commit a murderous rampage and then commit suicide. So, Mark, as we can see, was started planning some type of revenge against people because he was fired from his job. And I'm sure he blamed women for it, even though it has been noted in his employee file that it was due to his behavior and carelessness. And Just a quick side note, he was actually fired from 2 separate jobs in hospitals around the same time, within the same year, because of his aggressive behavior and disrespect to his supervisors and also his lack of caring for his work. His friends would note that he became unpredictable, flying into rage with frustration. One friend recalled, Mark had a lot of problems with girls and never had a committed relationship. He never held a job for long and had few interests or obvious hobbies, with one notable exception. He liked and was prolific at target shooting and could track and kill birds in flight with one shot. 1988, Mark began a computer programming course and again abandoned it before completion. He would later move out of his mother's house into his own apartment and would apply twice for admissions of engineering at École Polytechnique, but lacked 2 required compulsory courses, which one included solutions and chemistry. He never did the work. It was said that he wanted a girlfriend but was generally ill at ease around women. He tended to boss them around and show off his knowledge in front of them. Similar to his father, apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Mark had a long history of complaining about women in non-traditional jobs such as the police force, stating that women should remain in the home caring for their family. Men like Mark are the absolute worst. There are very few of them, but they are out there. Also, what are non-traditional jobs? Like, does he expect women to only have like secretary roles, housekeeping, like more domestic jobs? Times are changing, Mark. Times are changing. In 1989, Mark would apply again to École Polytechnique. Nevertheless, his application was rejected as he still lacked the required courses. In March of 1989, he abandoned the course in computer programming, though he performed well in his CEGEP course. That acronym's a mouthful. So, quick fun fact side note about CEGEP, what it stands for. I'm going to read the English version. College of General and Vocational Education. It is a type of post-secondary education institution in Quebec that offers a mix of general education and vocational training. CEGEP provides 2 main programs: a 2-year pre-university program, which prepares students for university, and a 3-year technical program, which leads to a diploma in various vocational fields. CEGEP plays a critical role in the education system in Quebec, bridging the gap between high school, university, or workforce. So that's a long, brief explanation about what CEGEP. And we can see by Mark's grades, he was a very intelligent man. He obtained 100% in his final exam. And in April of 1989, he met with the university's admission officer and complained about how women were taking over the job market from men. Yeah. There's a lot he complains about. He blames women for everything. Mark appeared to have been planning the massacre for several months prior. In August of 1989, he picked up an application for firearms acquisition certificate, and in mid-October of that year, he received his permit. On November 21st, 1989, he purchased a Ruger Mini 14 semi-automatic rifle at a local sporting goods store. Between October and December of that year, he was seen at least 7 times at École Polytechnique. 4 days before the shooting, Mark bought his mother a present. Though her birthday was several weeks away, he also brought, I can't speak, a note and 2 bags of his belongings, which she said she did not discover till after the shooting. Which brings us back full circle around to the beginning of this podcast about what happened on December 6, 1989. Forewarning, these events are very tragic, and I try not to go into too much graphic detail as possible. On December 6, 1989, Marc walked into École Polytechnique. He entered a second-floor classroom where he separated the men and women and ordered approximately 50 men to leave. Claiming that he was fighting feminism, he then shot the 9 women who remained, killing 6 and injuring the rest. After this, he moved to other areas of the building, including the cafeteria, corridors, and other classrooms. Heidi Rathagen, a 22-year-old engineering student at the University of École Polytechnique, who is now an anti-tobacco activist, considers herself one of the lucky ones. The nightmares are small things next to keeping my life. Whenever we thought things had quieted down and another round of bullets would shatter the silence, smacking our hopes, Heidi recalls. Following this tragic act of lethal violence against women, and where he would kill a total of 14 women, 12 engineering students, 1 nursing student, and a university employee, and injured 4 men and more women, Marc would then turn the gun on himself like the coward he was. The political nature of his attacks was largely overlooked by the media. In the aftermath of the killing, many people describe Marc's actions of the work of a madman, disconnecting the violence from his hateful and misogynistic attitude towards women. In short, it was not acknowledged that he targeted his victims because they were women, consistent with the definition of femicide. The Montreal Massacre gave Canada its first clue that the threat on feminism wasn't about women being allowed to do men's work. It went much deeper than this. The real threat was not in having women engineers. In other words, if men-women relationships remained the same, which basically means as long as women remained physically and emotionally available to men. The Montreal Massacre was Canada's foremost mass murderer, was in fact a trailblazer for these angry men like Marc, who, to this day, still blame women for their forced celibacy. The alleged lack of women's availability is what lies at the heart of the so-called incel. Incel stands for involuntarily celibate. So, cowardly men who blame women for not wanting to have sexual relations with them because they treat women like garbage. The rebellion is responsible for 2 other lethal attacks, one in California in 2014 and another in Toronto in 2018. Both Elliot Rodger and Alex Massacre were enraged that women were denying them what they were owed, a proper sex life. For those of you who don't know who Elliot Rodger is or Alex Massacre, I'm going to quickly tell you a brief, fun side fact about these 2 douchebags. Elliot Rodger was a 22-year-old man who gained notoriety for his mass shooting and stabbing incident in Isla Vista, California in May 2004. He killed 6 people and injured several others before taking his own life like the coward he also was like Marc. Elliot had previously expressed his feelings of loneliness, rejection, and frustration in a video and manifesto, which he released prior to his attack. His actions and writings spark discussions about issues such as misogyny, mental health, and gun violence in the US. Now we're going to move on to douchebag number 2. Alex Massacre was the man who carried out a van attack in Toronto on April 23, 2018. He drove a rented van onto a busy sidewalk, killing 10 people and injuring 16 others. Alex was later arrested and charged with multiple counts of first-degree murder and attempted murder. During the investigation, it was revealed that he had expressed admiration for the incels, okay, those involuntarily celibate people, garbage humans. During the investigation, it was revealed that he had expressed admiration for incels. Those guys. For the incel movement, which led to the discussion about misogyny and violence associated with it. In March of 2021, he was found guilty on all charges and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Without the possibility of parole for 25 years, most likely because that's what Canada does. But I doubt he'll ever get out. After Mark's death, a suicide letter was found in his pocket or pinned to his coat. There's contradicting information about where exactly Mark's suicide note was found on him. Some say it was in his jacket pocket. Other reports say that it was pinned to the outside of his pocket. I don't think those minor details make a difference because it's compared to his vicious actions. In his note, he wrote, "Please note that I am committing suicide today, not because of financial reasons, but because of a political ones. I have decided to send to their ancestors, the feminists who have always ruined my life. I hated feminists." And in this letter, he also wrote, "Even though I will be labeled as a crazed gunman," which he was, he concludes that I consider myself rational. The letter also contained a list of 19 Quebec women whom he had labeled radical feminists and appeared to target for killing. Another letter written to a friend promised an explanation for the massacre by following clues that were left in his apartment. The hunt only led to a suitcase of computer games and hardware. I guess that's one last hurrah for Mark. After hearing about the massacre, an official statement from the military stated that Mark had been interviewed, assessed, and deemed unstable. So the eerie fact about this is that Mark was buried in Notre Dame Cemetery in Montreal, a few blocks away from where he committed his massacre. I feel like that's kind of like an FU to his victim. I guess he can watch over them or look up at them. All the other women who are going to École Polytechnique getting their education on while he rots in hell with Elliot Rodger and other incel men who think women are property and owe them whatever they want. So when reflecting about this case of the Montreal massacre, it becomes clear that Mark was a classic mass murderer in many ways. Young, white, male, with a terrible grind to act. He was a gloomy introvert, uneasy with people, especially women. He had been abandoned by his father at a young age. He was bullied by his sister and kept at a distance by his mother, a woman who worked long hours as a nurse. And at the age of 25, he had never had a girlfriend. He was angry about it all and had to blame somebody. The tragedy had a profound impact on Canadian society, leading to increased awareness of violence against women, important conversations about public safety, mental health, and societal issues surrounding gender violence, and changes in the gun laws. Every year on December 6th, Canadians come together to honor victims of what is referred to as the Montreal Massacre and other femicide victims in the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. And that, my good friends, is the story of mass murderer Marc Lépine, who is a piece of shit. If you enjoyed today's episode of Verona Investigates, don't forget to like, follow, and rate this podcast wherever you listen. Find us on the socials for updates, episode content, and share your thoughts and theories about the cases. Your support means the world, and it keeps the investigation going. Thanks for listening, and stay curious. Bye!